Actually, while people are joining, Tim, why don't you show off the playing cards? Those are cool.
Yeah, I'll be talking. I may mention these. I was just showing Reed. If you're seeing this, we had a photographer. I'll show you this in a second. We over the last 3 years went to every state capital and did really nice photos. Some of them are upside down, and because there's 50 states and our territories in DC, we decided we make there's 52. There's four extra cards, not jokers, extra cards, and so we have all the states and territories. So we have a deck of really nice playing cards. Let's
That is
see.
cool.
There's the King of Clubs, Puerto Rico. I'm just
Yeah.
picking random ones. Kansas, three of diamonds. They're alphabetical, just so you know. So we had a lot of discussion about that. Montana's the King of Diamonds. Some of them are domes, some of them are capitals. But I think at the general sessions, we're going to put these out in the seats, at least maybe the first one, and then and as I also told Reed, the one thing like we didn't get like cheap paper cards. We actually got the bicycle good ones. So if you have any card players in your midst, come to Boston. Good
Those
deck
are
of
great.
cards.
Those are great. Okay, it looks like we got most people in the room now, so we will kick this off. Hi, folks. Welcome to today's webinar. We're really glad that you're here. I'm Reed Wilson, the founder and editor of Pluribus News, and I'm thrilled to say we are now a part of the State Affairs family. If you haven't already, go check out State Affairs' groundbreaking news and policy intelligence tools at stateaffairs.com. But today, I'm thrilled to host I think this is our third annual conversation with Tim
Oh, cool.
Storey, Chief Executive of the National Conference of State Legislatures. This year marks the 50th anniversary of NCSL and the Legislative Summit, which happens next week in Boston. And Tim is always nice to join us and preview the event because God knows there's so many sessions we all need a little guidance on where to go. So Tim, thanks for being here.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to it, Reed. I love it. Talking about this is an easy gig for me. I
Oh,
get to talk
good.
about what I love to talk about, which is NCSL. So looking forward
Awesome.
to it.
All right, well, let's start where we started last year with artificial intelligence. It's still the hottest issue on the legislative landscape. And it's been really interesting to watch different states and different legislators approaching AI from different angles. So I want to know, what are you seeing in the AI landscape? How are lawmakers addressing the use of AI and its guardrails?
So I think the days of the low hanging fruit are kind of, I wouldn't say in the rearview mirror, because you got to keep in mind only I think 17 states roughly have passed some form of legislation directly aimed at AI. And then you got all the related issues, but different about cybersecurity. Privacy, of course, is a huge issue that's in the AI realm. So it's pulling that in, a big issue in and of itself. So I would say we're kind of past the first round of low hanging fruit legislation, so to speak. And it wasn't there's some sophistication to some of the bills, certainly in some of the bigger states. You just had a Texas passed a major piece of legislation just in the last few weeks, signed by the governor in the last few weeks. So I think now the way I see it is you've had this whole burst of research and special hearings and special committees and national organizations. So I think that's going to lead to kind of a second wave. And so this summit in Boston, a lot of discussion. I think the busiest year will be 2026. And having said that, of course, I want to say that we were highly organized and highly unified in opposition. There was maybe not everybody was tracking on it, but in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, there was a clause that would have preempted all state laws on AI. It was very broad and there wasn't a lot of detail to it. It was put in sort of quietly. I think it showed up at that Mother's Day reveal of some of the language that happened over in the Senate. And so it actually did pass out of the Senate. I think it was in the House version that it stayed, and then we got it taken out in the Senate, I should say. It was when it was back in the Senate, we got it taken out. And so that was a big win because, it's tremendous federal overreach to just say, without really having another piece of federal legislation in place. I mean, that's a reasonable approach for the U.S. government, but that's not what they were doing. They were just preempting all state laws. So we worked hard against that. That was one element of our advocacy around the federal legislation. So it is still. I don't think we're at the end of the beginning, though. I mean, I think we're at the close to the end of the beginning because this is an issue that is with us for a while, and absolutely reflected in Boston. Another major topic. I'd say one of the top two, three topics that'll get a whole lot of attention.
Yeah, and we got my colleague Austin Jenkins is moderating a panel on AI at NCSL, so make sure you stop by that one.
Mhm.
Along with AI, I think we're seeing more and more lawmakers getting interested in cryptocurrency. I know there's at least one panel up in Boston about that. What conversations are you hearing around the sort of crypto alternative investment space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little. It's not something I've looked at closely recently. I think part of it has to do with the reaction to what the U.S. government is doing in the crypto space, and sort of what that leads for states to move on their own. The particularly um, what am I trying to say? That stable coin, and many states have looked at that issue and whether or not I know some states have looked at establishing it, taking it for payment. It's kind of an early round of dealing with crypto. So the end of the beginning has happened with crypto, and I think now we're more in the states looking to see what the early states did and how do they improve and change that so that there'll be a whole lot of follow on from other states. So it's I've kind of personally been skeptical, remain a little bit skeptical, but it is a fascinating and complex issue. And then it has all kinds of spillover issues like energy supply, which you've now got with AI. It's interesting that we're having serious discussions about the energy grid because of AI. That we were having serious discussions about the grid before AI, and then now it's on, supercharge.
Yeah, yeah. And so to that point, there's a panel on nuclear energy on Monday, and we're seeing more and more states having these conversations about small modular reactors. Talk sort of more broadly about that energy space. So this is suddenly
Yeah.
the dominant conversation around AI.
Yeah, we've had, I mean, I will say we've had an energy supply task force for a number of years because it's always an issue. And it's not just the total supply or the one, all source kind of things, but it's there are a number of issues, including environmental issues that are being looked at. But there's no doubt. I had the second year in a row where the nuclear I was about to say the nuclear option that has its own meaning, but the nuclear as a source of energy seems to have risen as a more popular place to explore. And of course, states have a huge role in expansion of nuclear energy and modular. I mean, that's been around for a long time, but it's evolved clearly to a point where it's realistic now as a in kind of deployment. So yeah, a huge issue. I would just say energy supply generally, and then there's the grid, right? Those two go hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah. There's a session on tariffs. As you know, President Trump has been governing by tariff in his first half year in office. What impacts are you seeing tariffs and trade wars more broadly having on the states?
Well, I mean, it's the biggest issue is just the economy, right? It seems to be the most it seems to me if you're looking at the market, you're looking at inflation, you're looking at all these issues that tariffs is dominating that conversation and its impact on the economy. Yeah, a few others. I shouldn't just say that exclusively. I mean, you think of workforce. We're 3 years ago, nothing but workforce supply, labor supply, and workers. Now you got AI influencing that as well. But um, I think it's more it hits on the budgets, on state budgets and sort of economic outlook. So that's where I think you go if you want to learn, go to those sessions on, and there are a handful of them on impact of tariffs vis-a-vis the economy, vis-a-vis tax systems. So that's where you're going to see it. Of course, there's supply chain issues, that kind of thing, but it's it feels to me, someone who pays a lot of attention to economic trends, that we are at we're more of a potential pivot point about what does the future hold. And there are early signs. There are a number of states, let's say a handful of states, that are already projecting shortfalls and problems for FY26 budgets. and not across the board. So it's not like, oh boy, this is it. This is the recession, which hopefully we will not slide into recession. But there are a number of states that are looking at it. And of course, there are also, the other dominant issue, and maybe you're going to go to this next or soon, is the impact of the federal legislation, One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and that will clearly have an impact on state funding in pretty much every state. Well, in every state, period. So state budget committees, budget chairs, budget staff are getting into the very explicit and specific aspects of the federal funding to the states. Another thing that states are looking at could hit their budgets hard.
Yeah, so that one big beautiful bill, that was my next question, is
Yep.
shifting a lot of the cost responsibilities from the feds to the states. Are legislators nervous about this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that because it makes, gives the states a lot of choice and options in terms of, okay, this is the amount of money you have. If there are, cuts, of course, those cuts are complex. It's not just cuts, it's how the bill's implemented and how it changes some of the administrative aspects of the big program, of course, Medicaid, but at many other aspects too. And some of the rescissions, come out of state budgets. So I absolutely think it now puts the pressure on state budget committees, state legislative budget committees to start talking about, okay, we might have less money. What do we prioritize? Do we need to raise revenue? Do we want to sustain the level of benefits that we've been providing in our state? And that varies greatly across the country. And there's one argument here that it gives the states the authority to do what they want, and but they're certainly going to have less federal funds flowing in, and then they got to make some tough choices.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I always value about NCSL is you all look beyond just sort of this latest bill or something. And you've written a lot about sort of the longer term budget and tax issues that states face. They say demography is destiny, right? Here we are with an aging population and declining birth rates. I mean, talk a little bit about sort of the longer term.
Yeah, no, it's the absolute ticking time bomb, and we've been talking about it for. I mean, I remember the graying of America demographics presentations we had. I mean, 20 years ago, really, and because it's just numbers. It's inevitable. You can't. The data was the data. Well, the time is upon us, right? And so more people, of course, elderly people need more services, period. And many of them do not have the resources for it and rely on a lot of different the sources of aid, whether it's direct aid, grants, charitable component to it. So no, that's constantly part of the equation for the states. I think the declining birth rates, that's the next ticking time bomb. That's a ways off. But entering the workforce, certainly paying for Social Security, federal program, but there are other elements of state programs that, yeah, if the tax revenue is going down because of any number of things, the declining participation rates, or just flat out slowdown in the economy, then it looks challenging. I think this year looks more challenging for state budget makers than we've seen in. Well, COVID's so weird, you almost have to like block that aside. Certainly, the COVID years were extremely unique and just almost kind of their own breed of cat. So since back to coming out of the recession in 2008, 2009, COVID, and then I think this coming year is going to be the most challenging budget year in a number of years.
Yeah, yeah. And it also strikes me that there are so few legislators still in office who remember the recession and how tough it was to cut those budgets. I mean, how do you prepare a new legislator for, somebody who's budget
Yeah.
chair but has only been there for a couple of years?
Well, this is where, I mean, frankly, this is where the legislative staff, being that backbone institutional memory, particularly the fiscal staffs, who are outstanding, and many of them have been around, but not all of them. I mean, that has been a long time, and hopefully we're not headed for a 2008 style recession, that and I'm not saying we are headed for recession, but if you look at the economic indicators, the probabilities are higher than they've been. I'm also very fond of citing the fact that when we entered into 2024, not this year, but last year, I remember there was a blue ribbon panel of economists, and I want to say like 48 out of 51 predicted recession in 24. It didn't happen. So predicting the economy is not an easy task. But what you can predict and project are state budgets, revenues and expenditures. And so that task of and it is largely driven by the overall economy, especially now today. It used to be that you'd really have a lot of isolation. You'd have one industry hit hard. So these three states that leaned heavily on energy or tourism or something unique like that would take particularly hard hits. But the national economy really hits all states in a lot of, pretty much. So long-winded way of saying that you're right. The loss of institutional memory is absolutely a fact, certainly among legislators. The longest serving leaders right now, I think it's Senator Berger in North Carolina, Senator Looney in Connecticut, and Speaker Voss in Wisconsin. Those guys are like 14, 16 years. So they were, right there at the beginning. So there's no leaders aside from just a really small number. And I'm thinking the 99 leaders here. So no leaders that have been through that. But there are institutional voices in there that hopefully can help them look back and see how they dealt with it.
Yeah. All right, let's move to sort of a happier topic. I'm really going to be interested in this session on Monday called "The Brave New World of College Athletics."
Oh boy,
And
yeah.
now that the NCAA has settled the suit, I see states doing so many things on these name, image, and likeness deals. Tell me a little bit about this. What's behind this?
Oh, well, it's one of those topics that in the grand scheme of policy is a niche, but it's a niche that everybody, not everybody, but many people pay attention to. So it has an outsized grab on the psyche of legislators, legislative leaders, the public. So there's a great deal of interest and a concern about, how does this affect March Madness? How does this affect the college football playoffs? How does this affect higher ed? Because there's a lot of really intricate budget issues for higher ed. Higher ed's got challenges. I mean, you talk, demographic issues, higher ed, the numbers declining, schools closing. So this is a real problem writ large. And now you've got this athletic side of the equation. Doesn't hit all, really we're talking big, medium schools. Well, it hits them differently, frankly. I shouldn't say that. So it's very complex, more so than one might think, and states are taking different looks and approaches at it. So, and there's definitely some ability for states to take the current framework of the settlement and the law, as such as it is, and look at different approaches inside states. So yeah, it'll be popular. That'll be one. Get there early if that's your favorite session.
I was going to say that's one you're going to need to reserve a chair for. So.
Yes.
There's another session on Monday, something that states are dealing a lot with these days, on THC and cannabinoids. These are the products made legal but unregulated under the Farm Bill in 2018, and states are moving to slap regulations on them with mixed success, I'll say. So what are you hearing from lawmakers on these cannabinoid products?
It's a new thing, but it also feels familiar. When you've got sort of a unique industry that has sees phenomenal growth in a short period of time, and then and there are public health issues related to it. So, and of course, most Texas lawmakers are not able to make it to Boston, which is a huge disappointment because Texas is usually one of our biggest groups. There'll be a handful there, I think, that are able to make it regardless of the special session. But obviously, Texas is one of the states. Anytime Texas and California do things, it sort of reverberates sometimes beyond. And I don't know what's going to happen with it necessarily, but I think it's going to, states are going to absolutely continue to regulate it both in statute and on the administrative side of things. And so, this is it, and it's one of those where it's a new issue. We're in kind of like the first year or two of what states are doing. So, that's it's one of those great issues where this is the forum you want to be at because you can really, in one quick thing, in an hour or whatever that session, you can get a real sense of where the states are all over the place.
Yeah,
The beauty of the summit.
we'll be covering that one for sure.
Yeah.
Give us your highlights. What other panels are you watching for?
Oh man, there's this is just totally
It's like 10 pages of website.
self-promotion, but there's the one about NCSL. I mean, it's total geek insider stuff. I don't know if the people joining us today will be excited, but we're actually going to do a session on our 50 years, and also kind of put it in the context of how the nation has changed. You think 1975, it was a very different country, it was a very different world. Our work was very different. The thing that's the same is our mission, still very similar, and I think still really solid. We it's a great foundation to build on. So the mission established in 75, very much the same, but our world has changed dramatically in so many ways. So I'd go to that session. And then if you come to the trivia session that me and my colleague will be hosting, I don't know when it is, but there's a fun trivia thing, and we'll be talking about people in legislatures and state stuff. And I don't want to give too much away, but there will be some good prizes. So that's definitely high on the agenda. And then I think, let me just kind of take a really quick glance at a couple of notes. I think there are some interesting things around legislative security, institutional security. Certainly, the horrible events that happened in Minnesota just 6 weeks ago or so have given that. And some of those there are many people who've thought about those issues for a long time. Legislative security people who are active in NCSL, so they'll be dealing with that. I don't know that's like a fun issue, like oh everybody should go, but I think it's an important one that's come up somewhat out of not out of nowhere, but it's an important one. The housing issues, states have not solved the housing crisis, and so I think that's a huge issue to people, or huge interest to folks. God, there's so many, man. I mean, I look at one of my challenges is I look at that program, and there's I don't know what it is, 100 or so substantive sessions. And I'm like, they all look interesting to me. And I'm just that kind of guy, like I just kind of have that wired to sort of like, oh, I can see where that'd be. I want to learn more about that. And so I don't want to like pick one of the children over any of the others, because I think all the sessions will be great. And I kind of mean that, and we have worked really hard to make sure that the sessions aren't just like, one expert, one blah 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 blah. So we've thought hard about how to make these for adult learning styles, and that. The last thing I would say is there's a ton of professional development about how to cultivate yourself as a professional. I think those are incredibly great opportunities, that are somewhat unique because we get some of the best. We really vet those sessions pretty hard. I think our staff are doing a number of them, but just kind of personal professional skills that you can build on. And yeah, you can go on LinkedIn Learning or Masterclass or those kinds of things, but it's hard to do that online a whole lot. So I'd say look at some of those professional development sessions, those training sessions. They're great.
Yeah, yeah. One of the to your point about so many sessions being on the agenda, one of the things that I always find really helpful about NCSL's Legislative Summit is how much effort you all put into teaching first timers how to have a successful conference.
Yeah.
So, like, talk about that strategy. Like, what do you tell a new lawmaker who's never been to a Legislative Summit before? How do they maximize their time?
Well, one, there will be a lot of those folks because as we sit today, our registration is going to easily go past 8,000. It will almost certainly be the second largest legislative summit NCSL's ever held, and will make a pretty strong run at the largest summit we've ever held, also in Boston back in 2007. So it's been a while. And then we've got over 1,600 legislators. So it's over 20% of all state legislators are attending, and that's a great number. And so many of them will be new. Also, 1,600 legislative staff, many of whom will be new, and then of course many people who are connected to this world. And so no, we really sort of walk them through some of the, what's a concurrent mean, what's a general session mean, so they just understand some of the language of this conference, and try to highlight, the key big issues or sessions that they want to attend. And one thing we'll be telling people this year is that we have thought tremendously about how to manage a meeting this size, because one of our goals is to make sure that a large meeting doesn't feel overwhelming and large. because the absolute value of this conference is when you chat with the person before the session you're sitting beside. And, our tendency is to be catching up on texts and emails, but you'd just be shocked at how much you learn by just saying, "Hey, why are you here? What do you do?" Whether it's a legislator, someone from a advocacy group or whatever. So we tell them, that's where we always hear networking is the most important thing of the summit. So we say, be aggressive about that, be active in reaching out. And even if you're an introvert, sit there. If you're on the bus, on the shuttle buses, because there are people at farther hotels that can't walk. So ask, or when we do the shuttles over to the social event at the TD Garden. So that's it. I think just sort of little tips and tricks, but one way we do that is try to give people like if you're first time at a big convention conference, here's how to get the most out of it. We'll be doing that for sure.
Hugely valuable to everybody. And I remember I think my first NCSL was in Seattle. When was that? That was
Oh boy, we've done Seattle a couple times. I lose track of which year, so I'm the wrong guy to ask.
it was
But yeah, always a bell ringer. People love Seattle, and I think we're headed back there in a few years because we have to book these things so far out because of the hotel blocks. So I think we're booked out for 5 years, and I want to say Seattle's out there somewhere. So
good. My hometown. I'll be happy to go
yeah,
back.
who doesn't love Seattle, especially in the summer when it's not
Yeah.
drizzly?
Hey, we have 2 great weeks of summer, and that's about it. So.
No.
All right, Tim Storey, Chief Executive of the National Conference of State Legislatures. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Oh, my
And
pleasure, Reed.
awesome.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right. And to everybody watching, thanks for joining us today. If you're going to Boston, come meet us at the Pluribus News State Affairs coffee station in the exhibitors hall. There will be fresh baked chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, count me in, Reed.
There we go. And if you can't join us in Boston, follow all of our coverage at pluribusnews.com and stateaffairs.com. I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for taking the time, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.